India versus New Zealand, a high-stakes ICC event encounter. India cruising at one stage, then derailed by a run-out. Could never recover after that. Sounds familiar? I'm sure it does, but this isn't the 2019 World Cup semi-final. We're talking about the 2000 ICC knockout final in Nairobi in this edition of Prime Video Sneak Peek. This was Sourav Ganguly's first ICC event as India captain, and the team was on a roll, beating Kenya, Australia and defending champion South Africa in the semis. For New Zealand, it was their first ever final at an ICC event, and they got there by beating Zimbabwe in the quarter-final and prevailing in a close encounter against Pakistan in the semis.
We were excited but very nervous. We knew, again, playing India, that we were probably outgunned, so we spent a lot of time thinking about how we could compete. Conditions in Nairobi were interesting, hard to read, but we'd done okay. It was a bit slow, the surface, so we had some slow bowlers that could operate in that. But it was just a case of restricting India's big guns and being able to compete with the ball to keep them to a score that we could either chase or set a target that was going to be big enough.
For the first hour and a half of the match, the only thing New Zealand got right was the toss. Sourav Ganguly and Sachin Tendulkar were quick off the blocks and gave India a flying start with the bat. The duo amassed 141 runs in just over 26 overs and were threatening to take the game out of New Zealand's reach very quickly. However, a terrible mix-up accounted for Sachin's wicket and India's batting lost their momentum.
Look, it was an innings of two halves. The first 25, we were looking at a massive score. But our fielding is something that we really pride ourselves on. So to get the run-outs and get back in the game through that way, and then as the pitch slowed down and new batsmen come in, it was certainly harder. So the run-outs played a massive part in us getting back into the game.
Despite Ganguly's 130 ball 117, India struggled to get a move on towards the second half of their innings, managing just 57 runs of the final 10 overs. New Zealand's chase wasn't off to the brightest of starts, with Venkatesh Prasad taking Craig Spearman out in the second over of the innings. They kept losing wickets at regular intervals, but Nathan Astle and Roger Toos scored at a good pace to ensure the team didn't fall too behind the asking rate. When Tendulkar dismissed Craig McMillan in the 24th over, New Zealand were down to 132 for 5, with 133 runs needed at an asking rate of just over 6. Chris Harris joined Chris Cairns at the crease and the pair had a job to do. They started cautiously, taking their time against India's spinners and kept milking the singles. As the partnership kept growing, they started taking calculated risks to ensure that the asking rate doesn't go beyond reach.
The top order, you could say, was just as strong as the middle order. The middle order would often keep us in games and win games for us. It was so good from sort of 6, 7, 8. So the rescue, once we sort of lost a couple of wickets, was always sort of in hand, and we felt confident with the resource that we had. We knew we had players that could play some innings, but we just need one innings of substance, and Cairns provided that.
With 50 needed of the final 6, Cairns and Harris managed 4 boundaries and a 6 in the next 3 overs to bring the equation down to almost a run a ball. Harris fell in the penultimate over off the chase, but his 122-run stand with Cairns was enough to help New Zealand win the ICC knockout trophy. Chris Cairns was the hero of the day for New Zealand with an unbeaten 102 of 113 deliveries, along with bowling an uninterrupted and tidy 10-over spell during India's innings.
He's also under an injury cloud, if I remember correctly. I think it was 50-50 whether he was going to play, but he was able to take a pretty much a full part, probably not a full pace with the ball, but that actually probably worked, bowling his cutters and a very good slow ball that he had. But it has to go down as one of the finest all-round performances for a New Zealand player, and the fact that it was on a big stage in a final is even more important to acknowledge. I think the innings itself, the boundaries were short, straight, and he was such a strong man that he was able to turn the difficult middle overs into a bit of a strength by just hitting his way through it.
This was, of course, New Zealand's first ever ICC trophy and remains still the only one when it comes to white ball cricket. Over the recent years, they have constantly made the semis and finals in 50 over as well as 20 over ICC tournaments, but have failed to cross the line, at times with the barest of margins. That's why there is little doubt that Stephen Fleming and the whole of New Zealand still savour this famous win in Nairobi.
We knew as a group it was important to win a world trophy, but as every competition, Champions Trophy goes on, it sort of gathers more importance. So you look back now quite proudly, but in some ways we were just playing another competition, not knowing where it was going to go. But in fact, we got across the line and were the first team to do it. and the only team to do it is something that we're very proud of. And it was a good competition, and we beat some good teams. So it was a good one for us to win.
That's all for now. I'll be back with another chapter in this glorious history of India-New Zealand matches. And as I leave you, don't forget to catch all the action from India's tour of New Zealand live on Prime Video from the 18th to the 30th of November.